avatar is. Because if you don't get clear on this, what that means is you're going to be closing the wrong people and you're going to have a pipeline full of hopium. It's 9 a.m. Canberra in Australia.
Am I on mute? I think I am.
No, I can hear you.
Sweet. And a lot of new faces, which is excellent. A bunch of new faces this time. So great to see everyone here. So Erika, we're going to discuss today some area which is all a buzzword nowadays called avatar clients. Now, when I was in business, when I first started, there was no buzzword called avatar clients, right? You just had target markets, your hot zones were, and things like that. So this is going to be pretty cool to look at the way it's worded nowadays around avatar clients. And you've got a wealth of knowledge in your background too, because you've got all that media and you've got the sales background. So let's have a quick introduction of yourself, Erika, and where you're coming from and why the avatar client's really good for you.
Well, the avatar client is something that I stumbled across, not really stumbled across, it was given unto me last year, but it really was quite helpful. I come from a radio TV sales background, so everything that I know from there had to do with how do you target a message? How do you get to the benefit? How do you build affinity through the camera? And that translated to what I was doing with copywriting, which then helped me out immensely with sales. So what I'm doing right now with my own business in terms of consulting is perfecting that hat trick of sales, digital marketing, and social media marketing, and copywriting, because most of the time sales and marketing is never the twain shall meet. It's two separate departments. Marketing doesn't get what sales is trying to do. Sales can't stand what marketing is doing. And I kind of come in and clean up those departments, get them to talk together, because synergistically I am doing all three of them at the same time and making them work in a very holistic manner. So that's a little bit about my background. But in terms of LinkedIn, I actually use LinkedIn for prospecting as well through Sales Navigator. I don't just post, and I definitely don't spam in the DMs. But one has to know who they're targeting and what message they're copywriting through what is called the avatar. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, cool. Like, if I go back to when I was teaching people in the real estate industry, we called it like where they already had business in their hot zone. So in other words, where they've got business before is where they're going to business again. That's one way of looking at who your avatar client is. It's like that. But the other way of looking at avatar clients is, who's my perfect client? Who's my ideal client that I can deliver what I'm going to say and get extra value out of? So I'm not sure if Avatar was around before the movie Avatar, but anyway, I like the fact that it has a catchphrase now, which is Avatar. So are we chasing our real ideal clients? And I think it's so important. Now you've got a few things to go over with your, you've got a PowerPoint presentation, which is cool. And then after that PowerPoint, we're gonna stop and then discuss it with everybody. It's up to you how you want to engage that with people. But as you go through this, I talked already about the zones, and I like to talk about the 3 zones. So as we go through here, have a think about how your avatar client works with your cold, your warm, and your hot zones. And cold, warm, and hot zones, it can be used in sales and marketing. So in other words, where you've got business is your hot zone. So, and everyone just on the side of that is in your warm zone, and everyone outside of that is in your cold zone. So just have a think about that. We'll discuss more about the cold, warm, and hot zones as we get closer to the end of the session. We are going to stick to 30 minutes, just so you know. And Erika's going to get ready for her presentation here. She's going to try and give you 5 key takeaways to find your avatar client. And that's how you're going to save time. So, one more example was in the real estate industry, there was people who focused on certain parts of their business. So they weren't just in real estate. They did retail, or they did commercial, or they did waterfront, or they did rural, or they did residential, they did apartment living. Do you get the point? So by being able to focus on that, made people become experts in that one area. So this is where the whole term avatar really comes in and adds weight to everybody. It just makes perfect sense. So you don't have to work twice as hard to achieve half as much. You can achieve twice as much in half the time. So when you're ready, Erika, I'll look after the chat and I'll look after the people that are coming in late. So when you're ready, you should be right to share screen. Are you good to go?
Yes, Absolutely. So basically, a lot of folks, like Scotty was saying, they keep missing their MRR, their monthly recurring revenue, and they don't realize why. They think it's because they're not skilled enough in sales. They think it's their way they're founder selling. They think that their salespeople might need more training. And although we always want to improve in those areas as salespeople or founder selling, you know, on our way to a sound exit or to a sound retirement or whatever that might be, that's really not the primary reason. The primary reason is the foundation, which is knowing what your avatar is. And that's the reason folks are not becoming clutch players. So part of being that clutch player is, you know, getting up at the 30,000 foot view and doing that homework to dial into who the ideal client avatar is. Because if you don't get clear on this, what that means is you're going to be closing the wrong people and you're going to have a pipeline full of hopium. And I say that because I used to have a pipeline full of hopium. And if you don't know what hopium is, that's when you have a lot of leads, but they're all the wrong leads. And so you kind of get disincentivized to approach them, but you keep them in your pipeline because it looks good. You have all the numbers and therefore they become your hopium. So we want to clear that hopium out and move on to maybe something that's going to be a little more helpful to you in closing the deals and making the money that you're wanting to make. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now and see if we can get this going. Here we go. And before I get into that, there's 5 areas of research and introspection that you'll need to do to discover who that ideal client avatar is. And I'm going to see if this play will work and we can get the whole screen going on. So the avatar, basically, this is going to be a demographic snapshot. Who is that ideal client avatar? Who exactly are you targeting? Well, there's going to be about 10 or so questions you need to ask yourself. The first is going to be the vertical. Are you targeting the right vertical? Is this the vertical that's going to get you the low-hanging fruit? Now, if we take a look at something like IT, IT is pretty broad. You can't just say, well, I want to talk to everybody in IT. If we break that down, IT is composed of SaaS, PaaS, MaaS, FinTech, healthcare tech, data analytics, cybersecurity, MSPs, folks that build custom and mobile web apps, and custom software development. So you really want to make sure you are in the right niche, because as the saying goes, there are riches in the niches, and you want to make sure that you focus in on the exact right one. You can branch out later, but for the purpose of discovering the avatar that's going to make you the most, hone in and really get your target practice going. Second is you want to know the annual sales range of the company. Are you going to focus on startups? Do those startups need to have venture capital? Are you okay with them bootstrapping? Because typically when they bootstrap, they don't have a lot of funding. So know if that's your starting point. From there, if they are going to do venture capital, are they small to medium businesses? Do they make $2 to $10 million in annual revenue or annual sales per year? Or do you want to go more enterprise, where we're talking tens upon tens of millions of dollars per year? You also need to know what that breaks down to in monthly recurring revenue, because if they've got monthly recurring revenue, not just project by project by project, they're going to be able to afford you on an ongoing basis. And by the way, your product or service should be, if you can make it be, a monthly recurring revenue thing. And that way you can do contracts or not do contracts, but at least you can go month to month without a worry, are they going to be able to afford me? As long as I'm producing. Number of employees in the company, you do need to know that. You know, are you going after smaller ones that have maybe 2 to 10 employees? Do you want larger ones that have maybe 50, or enterprise where you're beyond? You're like 150, 200, 300, 400 employees. So next up, know the titles of the decision makers. Now, the decision makers basically, it's probably going to be somebody at the C-suite level, but do use caution, you know, because some of these startup companies will have a CEO, and sometimes that just means chief exaggeration officer. Pay attention. Is this going to be a chief exaggeration officer, or is it really going to be a CEO? You might be talking more to the CTO or the chief sales officer. You might think, oh, this is a no-brainer. I need to talk to the chief marketing officer. So the other thing about that is you might be in a vertical like something like law enforcement, let's say. Well, the decision is not going to be at the top there. It's going to be middle management that does it. And then you have to be careful, because maybe there's a lot of red tape involved, and somebody like accounts payroll, you got Marge with her little beehive, and she's kind of in a bunch because middle management didn't let her know they brought you on board, and Marge with her beehive can hold up the payment that comes to you for the work you did. So these are things you really need to think about and get your fingers all pruny, by jumping in the deep end and solving these questions. Does the title and the vertical skew male or female? Does it skew to a particular age range? Does the title and vertical skew family oriented? Now, this is really important, and I'm not trying to make any kind of gender judgments or age judgments. This is what will affect the way you write your copy. Also, where does your avatar spend their time online? This goes back to where they're skewing to. What LinkedIn groups might they belong to? What favorite blogs and podcasts they might have, because guess what that's going to inform? That's going to help you with your copy. So what person or community might they love to follow online and why? And again, that's the same thing. If you can figure out what communities they're in, what groups they're in, what blogs and podcasts they're following, that's going to help you write some of your copy. You've got to know who you're writing to. So, core themes. How do you speak to their story? Choose 5 to 7 keywords that are really going to nail how your avatar is thinking and feeling right at this very moment. And really give that some thought. What frustrates them to tears? What scares them silly and it literally keeps them awake at night no matter how much melatonin they're taking? What challenges do they face on the daily? Where are they stuck? What do they lack? And then what feels super difficult for them? Now, all of that is going to help you craft basically your 1-minute elevator pitch as well as your sales pitch or your discovery call. I don't really like calling it the sales pitch, but I think of it more as a discovery call from a consultative approach. The next thing that you need to think about is 5 to 7 keywords that best describe how your avatar will think and feel after you deliver the results that they need. So what does that mean? This is the benefits. How do they feel after they got the benefits of the features and advantages you were telling them about, and you're narrowing it right down to here's what I gave to you. So did it meet their goals? Did it fulfill their psychological and emotional aspirations? Did it fulfill their dreams? Is it going to fulfill their needs and continue to fulfill their needs? And what do they value most? And when you only have that much time to capture somebody when they first land on your website, you got to cut right to the benefits in that case. So your most ravenous buyers, we've been kind of going up at this 30,000 foot pitch, and we are now going to bring it down to the granular level. And if I haven't triggered enough ideas for you, then this list absolutely should. So your most ravenous buyers, they're going to dream of what? What is their biggest desire? They're going to fear what? What is their biggest pain point? What do they need? Their biggest solution that you can provide them. And then here's what they Google day in, day out, racking their brains of, if I just had this one thing, life would be good. I would have relief. And then what do they despise? What is the thorn in the side, the bane of their existence? Can you fill that? And then most importantly, what are they going to pay good money for? Because I have a feeling it's going to hit on those top 5 ideas. And what would your avatar love you for? And when I say love you for, I mean like Pepe Le Pew chasing after you. They're not going to leave you alone. They're going to send more clients to you. They're going to be a raving fan on your behalf. You've got to ask yourself, what are they going to love you for? What specific transformation are they trying to get? What steps do they need to take to get it? What obstacles do they face? As well as ways that you are different. Now that's a whole nother class. I mean, if we needed to do a class on opposition research, I would totally be down for that. And it could come down to something as simple as your discovery call. Know the ways you're different in the client experience as well. And oftentimes the only way you can do that is to go undercover and do ops research. Highly recommend it, and it's super fun to do, to come up with a secret identity. So what is it that you're going to give them that's different than everybody else? That is your competition. Building expert affinity with your avatar. Now, this is going to sound like I'm talking about you, and I am, but I'm talking about you from the standpoint of them. So this is going to be your about us story. It is your origin story that builds relationship. So even as you are writing, it's still not about you. You need to hone in on features, advantages, benefits, really hammer home the benefits. So your story of drudgery and disappointment is what? This is the I've been where you're at, or as Scotty says, I've walked a mile or two in your shoes. You know, I've been there. I was in corporate America. It sucked because I wasn't allowed to make my own decisions, and I had all these ideas, and somebody else would take credit for that. And now, I am not saying that because it really happened to me. What I'm saying is, so many people resonate with that kind of a story. So I started up my own business because. So you want to go after it from that standpoint. I've walked a mile in your shoes, and here's what I've learned. I found a solution, but this is the mountain I need to climb to find it, and this is where I found it and what I did about it. So here's the results that I was able to achieve, and my secret revelation and aha moment is this, after I kind of went down into the valley and climbed back up the mountaintop. And my step-by-step guide for you, for your success path, equals this. Those are some very specific ways to build the expert affinity with your avatar. So what is the high value solution your avatar is going to pay for? Well, we talked about the features, the advantages, and the framework, as well as the benefits. And the benefits is really about the reason it works, as well as the way it's going to transform their business and their happiness. And to pay your price point, no matter what your price point is. And that's another reason for ops research. You want to make sure you're not underpriced, and you want to make sure you're not overpriced. But your avatar has to believe this one thing before they move forward with a purchase from you. And Scotty talks about this too in System 1357, and that is the 4 levels of the human mind. I highly recommend that teaching series on his website. And basically what that means is there are 4 levels. There is closed, there's open, there's confident, and there's believing. And so to get to that believing final stage, what is it they need to just be super jazzed over? And then what proactively are 3 of the top objections that really could keep them from a believing mind and therefore a purchase. And those 3 objections could be emotional, physical, and maybe it's not the right avatar. Maybe it has something to do with the demographic. Scotty?
Am I here?
Yes, you are here. I hope that wasn't death by PowerPoint, guys.
Well, that was excellent. And it really, while you were doing that, I was just drawing up the cold, warm, and hot zone in the background. And by doing all those things that you were talking about, it helps you focus in on exactly who your prospect is and what you're going to say to them, because you're consistent with them. And if I give a life story of that, when I finished and sold out of Renet, the real estate industry, I looked back and thought, gee, I missed a lot of opportunities. I had other business that came along in the travel industry, the cooking industry, and they all wanted a Renet type product, and they wanted it for their industry. And I always said no to them for lots of reasons. And when I finished, I thought, gee, I missed a lot of opportunities. But the reality was, it probably wasn't missed opportunities, because it didn't mean I had distractions in the business. I could stay focused. Really core focused in the hot zone of the industry and the type of client and the product I provided, instead of getting distracted and becoming the jack of all trades. So in the end, I didn't call it an avatar client when I started, but I certainly had one on that 18-year journey of owning the company Renet. It was very, very laser focused on real estate industry, and that was it. So it does work. It definitely gets rid of all those distractions. And what you're talking about there with that research and knowing what to say, when to say, what the solutions are, your introduction, it just brings it all together in such a nice way. So that was really good. Is there any other experiences you've got in real life that you can actually share with us, Erika?
Yes. There was a place that I worked at, and literally, and I mean literally, for about 2.5 months, I could not close a sale, which is not like me. I mean, if you know me, that is not like me. I am known as the cleaner, the closer, and it just wasn't happening. And what it came down to was my message was great. My message was on point. Everybody loved my message. The avatar was wrong. My sales navigator filters were set for the absolute wrong person. They weren't the decision makers. They could have cared less in what I could not have cared less in what I had that was a solution for them, or they simply just didn't have the means. Well, once we figured out the avatar was wrong and we dialed that in, I literally became responsible for bringing in a third of the company's clients. 1/3 of the company's clients in a 2-month time span. I outpaced everyone. I was the #1 salesperson by double, triple, and quadruple, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place. So when you have the right avatar, I mean, that literally put me on track for, I mean, just those 2 months alone put me on track for like well over 6 figures, like literally well into 6 figures. So when you have that dialed in, it's like I said, people say to you before you get to the ask at the end of your discovery call, okay, so what are the next steps? Like they don't care if you finish or not. They're going to finish and they want to move forward. So that's the example I have.
And like you said in your PowerPoint, you know, all your product knowledge, all the questions you ask, all the solutions and answers that you have are all based around this avatar client. Now the people that, can everyone see that board? I've got the wrong camera going here because it failed on me. Let me try this bit. There we go.
Yep, keep going that way.
Yeah. So, you know, it allows you to be that laser focused on exactly, you know, all the right things to say and do and follow up with. You know the next steps every single time. It's not uncharted territory. And it just allows you to be able to deliver everything that you want and everything that you've practiced and trained for, or the business you want to be in, because it's always consistent. And sometimes you've got to say no to business because it comes out of left field and you go, oh, but look, it just doesn't fit in with where my trajectory is on this business or this company. And if you're just starting out, so when I first started out in the whole IT industry, I'd left the insurance business and I started building websites. And look, at the turn of the century, websites were the biggest technology going around. Not that there's very technology now, everyone's got a website, right? But at the turn of the century, everyone just wanted a website. And I was trying to work out how to fit myself into this whole technology space. And I thought, well, I didn't have an avatar client during that chapter. I was trying to figure out how I fit it in. But then again, I did have an avatar client. What I did was I went to the biggest businesses in Coffs Harbour, which is my city I live in. I went to all the biggest businesses and tried to get them on board so I had inference and experience and knowledge to steer me to where I really wanted to go, which was be a solution provider of some sort. But by having that target of exactly what I wanted, it helped define the business that I really wanted to be in. So in the end, I could have gone down a car yard industry, I could have gone down a travel industry, but I ended up going down the real estate industry. So I ended up getting even more focused again after that. And once again, it's because I became, in the end, an expert in the real estate industry. So this started to reverse its way back. So not only did I have my avatar clients, you know, when you get your avatar client, you start getting traction with that avatar client, you become the avatar supplier. You become the focus back in return. So people start going, well, who do I go to? Who am I looking for? And you become the avatar back in return. And that's when things start to roll and you start to really be able to scale and get traction, because people can see you know what you're doing. You become the avatar in return. Does that make sense? It comes back to you in that way. Do you follow what I'm saying there about your cold, warm, and hot zones, Erika?
I do. And that's brilliant. I'd never really thought of that myself, that you in return, it cycles back and you become the avatar for other people.
Yeah, you become the reverse avatar, because that's how you present yourself. You said social media and your posts, your comments, everything becomes a reflection of who you are. So when they think, well, who do I talk to? I'll go and talk to that person because they know what they're doing. And that's how it works in reverse. There's always two sides to everything. There's you going out, there's them coming back at you. So how are we going for time? So we've got a few more minutes. We will finish on time and hang around for Q&A for anyone that wants to stay a bit longer. Always happy to do the social side of it. But in saying that, in the chat room, if anyone wants to ask a question, go for it. And we'll try to answer those during this 30 minutes as well. But in saying that, I talk all the time about a fish attracting device, okay? And a fish attracting device is, you think about the shipwrecks in the ocean or the reefs. All the fish come to all that because that's an attraction for them. It's where the food is, it's where their safety is, it's got all those things. So the better you know your avatar client, the more you can do things to attract that business back to you as well, which is what I was talking about here in the reverse. So the fish attracting device is a really cool way of thinking about, if I become a jack of all trades, how am I going to attract the right fish to me? I can't physically do that. I become a wandering generality when what you need to do is become very focused on who you are and what that value proposition is. And that's why the avatar client is so important. If you were a real estate agent, like for 18 years I taught real estate agents how to be $1 million a year salespeople. And if they've focused on rural and they started listing commercial properties or industrial properties, you can see how it's a distraction for them really easy, right? Because they can't focus on that industry, they can't focus on the recent sales in that area, they can't focus on exactly who they are and what value they bring. Yeah, just had a quick question here that came from Brendan. Can you have multiple avatar clients? Well, yeah, you can. I do agree there's multiple avatar clients. In saying that though, they've all got to be within sort of the cold and warm zone, the warm and hot zone here. If you're trying to get avatar clients in your cold zone, unless you're going to completely pivot and change careers and you want to get rid of that hot zone and create a new one, well then they've always got to be within your zones. So as an example of that, I might be and let me give two examples. One is my own and one is the real estate industry. So if I was a commercial agent, for example, selling commercial industrial properties, and my focus was on this suburb or this region, and then someone came up and said, listen, can you sell my place? It's just in the suburb next door and it's commercial industrial. It's out of your hot zone, but it's probably acceptable to do that. I had sort of three zones for hot. So I had real estate agents at Renet. My typical business was real estate agents, but I also did industry solutions. So the other avatar client I had was other companies in the industry that were trying to get into the real estate industry that needed to be able to talk to all the real estate agents that I could. So they needed me. I was their avatar in reverse. So I had a product or a solution. I was the only one in the industry in Australia that did it, that had a product or a solution that could actually talk to all the other providers in Australia that were my competition. So it was perfect business judo. But yes, so Brendan, I believe you can have different layers of your avatar client. You just want to keep them somewhere around this hot to warm zone on who you are and what you do and how you fit in. So you want to be a square peg in a square hole or a round peg in a round hole. So yeah, you can have multiple layers of avatar clients. There's no issues with that. But if you're going to be a steak restaurant, be a steak restaurant. And if you're going to be a Pizza Hut or a pizza restaurant, be a pizza restaurant. You've got to try and focus on which one you are. But at the same time, you've got entrees, you've got mains, and you've got desserts. So you might be known for all of those at the same time. So yeah, I do believe you can have multiple avatar clients. So that was a really good question there, Brendan.
And two, they can be two different avatars in two different spheres. So let's say, for example, sorry, I keep going back to IT, but let's say, for example, you want to design an app and the app is reliant on, maybe you need experts. Okay, and so that is going to be a B2B pursuit, business to business avatar. But then that app is also reliant on people who are seeking those experts. So now you're trying to get business to consumer clients. So now you've got an avatar that's B2C. So it is possible to have completely different spheres within just one product line. And yes, you could have those kind of avatars. And that brings up another point. You've got to know the difference between the B2B and the B2C, because you might want to prospect on LinkedIn for B2B, but you can't prospect for B2C necessarily on LinkedIn. That's more of a Facebook thing. So really knowing your avatar also affects the type of social media that you're going to pursue and where you're going to market.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. And Steve's asked, how do you successfully pivot your personal avatar? What's your thoughts on that, Erika?
So my personal thought on how do you successfully pivot your personal avatar. I just had to go through this because how I was viewed on LinkedIn was I was in sales for another company. I had started doing my website. I was branding it in terms of being almost like an affiliate marketer, even though that's not what I officially was. I was in sales, but the way to position the website was to brand it kind of like an affiliate marketer would. Then I had to pivot because I was on my own and I went consultancy. So then it became a matter of my own personal branding. Everything was already under erikawarfield.com. So for me, my personal pivot really came to, okay, I got to figure out, does my avatar remain the same? It mostly remains the same with whom I'm pursuing, but how I speak to them is going to be different. So for me, that's how my personal pivot kind of came about, was bringing more of myself out, picking my own icons and symbolism that really kind of spoke to what my values were. But not just my values, because it was a personal pivot, but once I did that, how would that resonate? What would be the benefit to the people that I was pursuing and prospecting?
Yeah, cool. And I think I read somewhere, I don't know what the facts are, so let's just throw this out there, that people go through like 3 career changes in their lifetime, sorry. So, they go from being a tradie to not being a tradie, and they end up deciding to open up a restaurant or something. Or they, what I mean by a tradie, that's Australian term for builder and, plasterer, plumber. So they end up going and they change completely at some point in their career. Or some people, they go to university and they become, an accountant or a lawyer, then decide they don't want to deal with that anymore and they want to go out and start a fishing charter business. And they completely pivot personally into who they are and how they want to fit in. And they say everyone goes through, 3 of those career changes in their lifetime. And most people, you can already relate that you've all had a pivot at some point where you've completely flipped and now you've got something completely different that you're doing for a career than you did 10 years ago. But the way everyone does that, it's actually perfectly normal to do it, is what I'm trying to say to you, Steve. So if you're going to pivot yourself successfully, well, it's okay, first of all, that you do it, because most people do it several times. The other thing is, every time I've done it, it just became a whole new set of energy that I put into learning and driving towards something that I really wanted to do. So my avatar also pivoted to my lifestyle, what I wanted to do for a career, the clients I had, and how I wanted to go forward in the next decade. So yeah, can you successfully do it, and how do you do it? Well, it came down mostly to me to make that. It wasn't a decision, by the way. I actually call it more of an epiphany. So you imagine you've been a police officer for the last 10 years. You wake up one day and go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go and do this job from now on in. And it's not just a change, it's actually a complete epiphany. How you're going to wake up every day and how you're going to go out and see the world and what you're going to do next. So, and an epiphany really is a life-changing moment. So your own avatar, the good news is you're able to control who you are and what you want to do. So that's the good news. Can you successfully do it? Yeah. But it comes down to you and how much attention to detail and how much you work on who you are, what you want to do, where you want to be in the next 5 or 10 years, and how you're going to get there. So I like the fact you talked about your own personal avatar, by the way, because you do have your own identity and your own hotspot too.
Yeah, and the same questions in the PowerPoint would apply. It's the same process.
Yeah. So I'm happy to hang around for a little bit longer, but that's, I think, 30 minutes. How long have we been going for? 30 minutes? So for those that need to go now, by all means, you can wrap up and roll. So thanks everyone for coming. Erika, that was really good. Erika, you got anything else you want to add as we start to wrap up?
No, I wanted to thank everybody for making time out of their day to join us. If you have any other questions, but you need the boogie, feel free to, direct message myself or Scotty. Feel free to take a perusal of System 1357, at another time. In the meantime, for anybody who does split, we're going to take a question from Brendan Rogers on where does the balance sit between hunting your avatar versus having a fish attracting device and attracting your avatar. And Scotty, that was my camera too, falling off its tripod.
Love technology. We're all zoomed up, but it still doesn't work perfectly yet, does it?
So his question was, where does the balance sit between hunting your avatar versus having a fish attracting device and attracting your avatar? I think that's a great question because and I think it's funny that you use the word hunt. I don't hunt, but I'm a shooter. And so for me, it comes down to the difference between sniper fire and buckshot. So, a fish attracting device is your buckshot, and you do absolutely need to have one, and you do need to be doing it. The sniper fire for me is how I prospect on LinkedIn. And so I do that through video. When I first greet people on LinkedIn, there is never an ask. There is never a, hey, I wrote a book, buy it. It's never about that. But my videos are very much my sniper fire when I prospect, and I dial in on who is that avatar and how can I provide value up front without ever having an ask. And then the fish attracting device, that might be your posts on LinkedIn. That might be a landing page with a huge value add PDF for people. But that's your buckshot, definitely. Scotty?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that question because there is a balance between it, hey, Brendan? And the irony is I taught fish attracting device when I learnt it in 2008 as a unique term, but I never really had one at Renet because by then I was already established. So I spent most of my time hunting and prospecting rather than having a fish attracting device myself. But at the same time, I guess I sort of did. Some of the things that attracted people to Renet was, I could always display how long we'd been in, what we did. But yeah, I didn't really have a fish attracting device per se. Like nowadays, a good fish attracting device is like your podcast. And I didn't have any of those sorts of things. I didn't have a YouTube channel. I didn't have ways or even social media to create that attraction. We had enough momentum in the industry, in the business. I just didn't do it. But I taught real estate agents to do it. So real estate agents would do things like golf events and feature nights and sponsor things and charity events. And that was their fish attracting device. So I taught people to do it. But the irony was, what's the balance? Well, I didn't actually need a fish attracting device. That there was the outward one that most people do. And when I first started, I came from a sales background. So my balance had nothing to do with attracting people, was simply going out and hunting my avatar client. So that was all I did. That's how I started the company. That's how I grew the company. And that's how I exited from the company. For me, was always about hunting and driving the business and not waiting for them to come. But the beautiful thing now is I do believe there are some amazing things you can do that help that process a lot with the fish attracting device. And if you've got the ability to balance it out with other things instead of hunting all the time, 100% do it.
Yeah, because it's the difference between your inbound sales and your outbound sales. And it does get tiring because I've done both. And when you are just the hunter and the closer and you don't eat unless you bring down the mastodon, it gets really, really tiring. And so yes, there is that balance, but you absolutely want both if you want to be successful.
Yeah, and if I reverse that, a lot of people I see, one challenge that a lot of people have nowadays, especially with social media, is the fish attracting device becomes the main driver and they stop hunting. So they're more busy doing their podcast and they're more busy doing their social media posts than they are recognizing a lead and they are recognizing a sale and recognizing someone that wants their business because they're too busy doing the next fish attracting device thing. And that could be all focused on their podcast, for example. Not saying podcasts are bad, I'm just saying that it's typical nowadays. What I'll do is I'll start a podcast as a fish attracting device, which is perfect. But just remember there's a means to an end, or your word, Brendan, was perfect. It's balance. So it's having that intent with your fish attracting device to attract the avatar client, but make sure you execute after that. You've got people from the cold zone through the warm zone into who you are, what value proposition you have, what your products and services are. And then it's just a matter of recognizing when they turn up. So your keyword in there was perfect, Brendan. It's about balance. It's funny the word avatar client, and I think the benefit, one of the side benefits having the avatar client is it helps define who you are and where you want to go. So it's okay if you have an avatar client and then all of a sudden you start to pivot it, you start to change it. So your avatar client might be small to medium enterprise, for example. And then all of a sudden you start to get a bit of traction on the side from some larger business. But as long as it's okay to pivot, as long as, and define your avatar client as you go, as long as it's still within your region here. So it goes a little bit on what Brendan asked earlier with the whole, is it okay to have multiple avatar clients? Yeah, and it's okay to pivot your avatar client as well. As your business grows, your experience gets better, and you realize, well, hang on a minute, that might have been my avatar client 6 months ago or a year ago, but they're not now because I found they don't have the money to spend, or they don't have the time, or I'm not getting the results with them, but I'm getting results with these other types of people within the same sort of space. So it's okay to continue to pivot and evolve who they are. As long as you know who your avatar client is, that's all that really matters. So yes, evolve, pivot, refocus, but what that means is you're not spending as much time trying to get people from the cold zone when you've actually got a nice warm and hot zone to work with. So pivot as much as you like. It can evolve, and you could be, let's say I was designing websites still. Well, it might be now large corporations, or it might be still mum and dads with $1,000 to spend, but I've got a bucket load of templates. As long as I've defined what it is, it's still in that space of website design. So it's okay to pivot and change it as often as you want. But I would suggest within this zone. So that's, what have we got now? 40 odd minutes. I'm happy to stay around a little bit longer, but look, it's up to you, Erika. What else do you want to add as we start to wrap up?
Hang on. Yes, if I could get my mute off. Just for anybody who came in late and they would like to see a replay, Scotty will be cutting video of this, and there will be a link available. I'm not quite sure how he can share that with us. And also we can make the PowerPoint available. So hopefully you weren't trying to chicken scratch notes that whole time I was flying through it.
Yeah, and definitely, and also share some links on some of the videos that follow up with this. So no problems. Anyone's got any questions, by all means, we're still available afterwards. Erika's always available online. You can always follow her on her LinkedIn channel, which is growing and growing all the time. So, but if there's nothing else to add, we just say thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate it. Erika, I'll let you wrap it up.
Awesome, everyone. Feel free, if you're not connected to me and Scotty, to get connected or to follow. If you have any other questions, feel free to DM us. And Scotty will be sending the emails out. We appreciate you very much for making time in your day to visit with us.